and we got it done. And one of the things that well, I'm
Well, and
talking too long.
Alyssa,
Now, again, on this theme of Democrats learning absolutely nothing, we've got Joe and Jill Biden going on The View, that lovely bastion of hard-hitting cable news journalism, and again, pushing some of the most absurd, woke victim narratives that they're still clinging to. President Biden was on there and insisted that Kamala Harris lost not because of her ties to his failed administration, their disastrous border policies, the inflation that happened while he was president, not because of her random cackling and her word salads, not because she only had a couple months to campaign because they stuck with Biden for too long, not any of these real things. Instead, he blamed, shocker, the identity boogeyman. Take a listen to this.
But then election night came, and it was like 2016 all over again. Yeah. So why do you think the vice president lost, and were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, not because I didn't think the vice president was the most qualified person to be president. She is. She's qualified to be president of the United States of America. Right. But I was surprised. I wasn't surprised because they went the route of the sexist route, the whole route. I mean, this is a woman. She's this. She's that. I mean, it really. I've never seen quite as successful and a consistent campaign undercutting the notion that a woman couldn't lead the country, and a woman of mixed race.
Yeah.
And they played that to a fairly.
What? What is old Joe here even talking about? I covered the presidential election very closely, and there really wasn't that much made about the fact that she was a female candidate. She got a lot of praise for it, I guess, but she didn't lean into it that much in the couple months before the presidential election. And the Trump team certainly wasn't making that a big issue. That wasn't a thing. They attacked her over the border. They attacked her over inflation. They attacked her over her crazy past social positions, like saying transgender prisoners and illegal immigrants should get taxpayer-funded sex change surgeries, all these things she was on the record saying, but it wasn't, oh, we can't have a mixed race person leading America. That is just not true. I'm sure you can find some people somewhere who believe that or think that, but it wasn't a widespread sentiment. It wasn't a driving force behind the campaign, and it certainly wasn't a dominant talking point as to why she lost the election or why people voted against her. And it's just a cheap and cowardly way out that avoids any accountability for the fact that he picked a poor vice presidential nominee. She wasn't very good at any of this. And then he stuck in the race, even though his brain had turned to mush until it was too late. Then putting her in, honestly, I have a little bit of sympathy for Kamala Harris, just politically speaking, because she was in a very difficult position to have Biden cling to the nomination, run for re-election, even though his brain was cooked. He shouldn't have run again, and then leave her having to scramble and put together a campaign with just a couple months left to go. That is a very difficult position to find oneself in. I'm not saying she covered herself in glory. She could have done it better, but it's not like she had it easy because of the way that he set her up. And so I think that explains this BS identitarian deflection. He's trying to escape accountability. He's trying to admit or avoid admitting how he messed things up, because he did, and he's the huge culprit here. But it's cheap, divisive, race-baiting nonsense. And if anything, look, she was only the nominee because of her race and gender. That's just true, because when he was selecting a vice president, he specifically said, I'm only going to pick a woman, ruling out more than half of the Democratic Party's options. And then he said, I'm strongly leaning towards a woman of color. So it's a bit rich to blame the fact that she lost the election on extremely dubious and spurious allegations of racism and sexism when she actually only had that position and that opportunity in the first place because of a form of reverse discrimination of this DEI type. Not to say she wasn't qualified on paper. She'd been a vice president. She'd been a senator. Sure, but she was lacking in a lot of other areas, and there's really no disputing the fact that if she'd been a white male senator from California, she never would have been selected as vice president, and therefore she never would have become the nominee. Can anyone dispute that? Can anyone really argue that an identical senator to her named Bill Stevenson, some boring white dude, would have been picked as Biden's running mate? Can anyone seriously tell me that with a straight face? Even more wild than this maddening moment from Joe Biden was a follow-up segment on CNN where panelist Ana Navarro defended this and lost her crap on live TV. Take a look at this, and warning, guys, this is unhinged.
My point is, the idea that she lost because of racism is absurd. She lost because the country was in a disastrous place, and they blamed him and his politics that she had to defend.
Can I tell you something?
And he's a white guy saying, as a white guy, he won and she didn't win.
You as a white guy have the privilege of saying that racism, and you as a white male.
I'm saying it's an incredibly
I am telling you right now.
Statement as a white guy to sit there on stage and say, I would have won with the same policies that she ran on.
As a woman of color, I am telling you that it is incredibly ridiculous for you, with the privilege that being a white male gives you in this country, to say that there wasn't some element of racism
I think it was
and
terrible
sexism.
policy.
The fact that people like Anna Navarro get paid millions of dollars a year for their profound political insight to be aired on cable news will never cease to astound me and hurt my soul, honestly, because I think a random person off the street could show up and make a much more coherent and sensible argument, because she literally didn't make an argument. Ben Ferguson, this conservative commentator, said, I don't think Kamala lost because of racism. I think it was her policies. That is a proposition. It is a debatable proposition, but there's a series of facts and arguments that go into it on its side, and then there's counter arguments. She responded with a total non-argument. She simply said, you're wrong because you're white, so you must be incorrect about this, and I'm a woman of color, so I must be correct. This is anti-logic. This is an identitarian mind virus, because it absurdly suggests that if you'd had a black Republican woman, which plenty do exist, commentator sitting there and saying the same thing that Ben Ferguson said, it would have somehow been more correct or more valid. No, it's an argument. It's either right or wrong based on its logic and its points. And I don't know how to explain to some progressives in 2025, I don't know how to explain to them how wrong it is to think that simply citing someone's skin tone makes you correct and them wrong. Again, babe, it's giving woke KKK. It's giving a complete lack of critical thinking, and it's the exact kind of divisive nonsense that's made Democrats so unpopular in this country. Other than that, though, great job, Anna. You're doing amazing. Now, while we're talking about this appearance that Joe and Joe Biden did on The View, we should talk about another moment from it, which obviously Biden has been in severe cognitive decline for some time. There've been all this reporting and all these books about it, exposing it behind the scenes. And to the credit of the one host of The View, Alyssa Farah Griffin, who I like, I don't agree with her on everything, but I like her. She seems nice. She actually asked President Biden about this, and it didn't go great, I should say. It did not go amazing for President Biden here. Take a listen.
Mr. President, since you left office, there have been a number of books that have come out, deeply sourced from Democratic sources, that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. In the final year of your presidency, what is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that, number one. Number two, think of what we were left with. We were left with a circumstance where we had an insurrection when I started, not since the Civil War. We had a circumstance where we were in a position that the pandemic, because of the incompetence of the last outfit, end up over 1 million people dying. And we're also in a situation where we found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in the interest of time. And so we went to work, and we got it done. And one of the things and
Alyssa, one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us, and they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day. I mean, he'd get up, he'd put in a full day, and then at night I'd be in bed, reading my book, and he was still on the phone, reading his briefings, working with staff. I mean, it was nonstop. It's the White House, being president is not like a job. It's a lifestyle. It's a life that you live. You live it 24 hours a day. That phone can ring at 11 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning. It's constant. You never leave it. And Joe worked really hard. I think he was a great president.
So Biden does come off as sharp and with it in this clip. Jill Biden, not Joe. And it is extremely telling that when asked about his mental acuity and the extensive reporting and books written about its decline and a huge cover-up in politics and media, President Biden brings up two bizarre, irrelevant things that have nothing to do with his state of mental fitness. One, January 6th, which happened before he was president, so I don't understand how does that affect your mental sharpness in office over the next 4 years? And then two, COVID-19, but the facts here actually, more people died of COVID-19 in America while Biden was president than Trump. And I'm not even saying he's to blame for that, but again, it just makes no real sense to bring up as a response, and also has nothing to do with his alleged cognitive decline that was put on full display at that presidential debate where he started talking about Medicare and all sorts of nonsensical rambling. And then I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, President Biden, but the fact that you trailed off in mumbling after about 60 seconds, not even, when asked about your mental fitness, and your wife had to come jump in, cut you off, and take over the answer and speak for you and explain it all for you, is not helping your case, Uncle Joe. It's not helping you beat the cognitive decline allegations at all. In fact, it kind of proves the point that a lot of your critics were making. And I've said this before. There is no shame in aging. There's no shame in the decline that Biden experienced itself. It's normal. It's natural. It's human. The shame is in clinging to power. The shame is in running for re-election again when you shouldn't have, when you should have passed the torch. You should have allowed Democrats to have an open primary and go through a whole process and come up with a better candidate potentially. And the shame is in the cover-up, the way they lied, they gaslit, they denied for years. The shame is in that. I always want to clarify this. There's not shame in aging. In fact, we should all be so lucky. There's not shame in things that happen to us as we age that we can't control. The shame here that will haunt the Biden legacy, I think, forever, is in the lying, the deceit, and the clinging to power. And clips like this just prove more and more how guilty they are of the accusations that have been made against them. But what do you guys think? Do you believe Jill Biden's version of events here? Let me know in the comments.